The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and sorrow, a sterile cage for fading hopes. Eleanor Grayson, frail at 82, sat by the bed where her husband, Thomas, had taken his last breath just hours ago. Her trembling hands clutched his old wool coat, its fibers worn thin by decades of love, now heavy with a secret she could no longer carry alone. Eleanor's eyes, clouded with age but sharp with memory, traced the room's stark walls. The heart monitor was silent now, its jagged lines flatlined into eternity. She hadn't cried, not yet. Grief was a tide she'd learned to hold back, but it lapped at her edges, threatening to spill. Thomas had been her anchor, her North Star through 60 years of marriage, and now the world felt unmoored. The coat, draped across her lap, was her last tether to him. She ran her fingers over its frayed cuffs, remembering the way Thomas used to tug it on before his early morning walks, whistling tunes from their youth. A young nurse, Clara, entered the room, her steps soft but purposeful. Her badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and her eyes carried the gentle exhaustion of someone who'd seen too many goodbyes. "Mrs. Grayson," she said, her voice a quiet balm. "Is there anything I can get you? Water? A blanket?" Eleanor shook her head, her gaze fixed on the coat. This was his, she said, her voice a fragile thread. Thomas wore it every winter, said it kept him warm even when the world felt cold. She paused, her fingers brushing a loose stitch near the collar. "There's something inside it. Something he wanted someone to find." Clara tilted her head, curious but cautious. "Inside the coat." Eleanor nodded, her hands steadying as she lifted the garment and passed it to Clara. "The lining. There's a letter sewn in. I can't open it myself. Not now." Her voice cracked, betraying the weight of her request. "Will you do it for me?" Clara hesitated, sensing the gravity of the moment. She took the coat, its wool rough against her palms, and felt an unexpected heaviness not just in the fabric, but in the story it carried. She sat beside Eleanor, carefully inspecting the lining. Sure enough, a subtle bulge near the inner pocket revealed a hidden seam, meticulously stitched. With Eleanor's permission, Clara retrieved a pair of scissors from the supply cart and began to cut, each snip echoing in the quiet room. The letter emerged, yellowed and creased, sealed with wax that bore Thomas's initials. Eleanor's breath hitched as Clara handed it to her. "Do you want me to read it?" Clara asked gently. "No," Eleanor whispered. "Not yet. But stay, please." Clara nodded, pulling a chair closer. Eleanor broke the seal, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakably Thomas Spold, looping, a little unsteady from his later years. As she read silently, her face shifted from sorrow to shock, then to something softer, like recognition. Clara watched, her heart pounding with curiosity, but she didn't press. This was Eleanor's moment, not hers. The letter wasn't long, but each word seemed to carve itself into Eleanor's soul. It spoke of love, yes, but also of a promise Thomas had made long ago, a promise tied to a winter night in 1963, when their world had nearly shattered. Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she handed the letter to Clara, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Read it," she said, out loud. Clara cleared her throat and began. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for leaving you to carry this alone. You remember that winter when we lost everything, our savings, our dreams, our trust? I made a choice then, one I never told you about. I couldn't bear to see you break, so I took a path I swore I'd never take." The words hung heavy, unraveling a secret Thomas had buried for decades. Clara's voice faltered as she read, her mind racing to piece together the implications. Eleanor stared at the floor, her hands clasped tightly, as if bracing for a truth she'd always sensed but never dared to face. The letter revealed that Thomas, desperate to save their struggling farm during a brutal financial crisis, had accepted money from a man named Victor Hargrove, a local businessman with a shadowed reputation. The deal was simple. Thomas would deliver unmarked packages across state lines, no questions asked. He'd done it once, then twice, each time hating himself more but seeing no other way to keep their home. The money had saved them, but the guilt had gnawed at him ever since. "I never told you," the letter continued, "because I couldn't bear to lose your faith in me. But I need you to know now, Ellie, that every choice I made was for us. For you. Eleanor's silence was deafening. Clara set the letter down, her own heart aching for this woman who'd just lost her husband and now had to grapple with his hidden truth. Mrs. Grayson, she said softly, I'm so sorry. Eleanor shook her head, a faint smile breaking through her grief. Don't be. He carried that weight, so I wouldn't have to. That's who he was. She reached for Clara's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. But there's more to this. The letter, it's not just a confession. It's a map. Clara blinked, confused. A map? Eleanor nodded, pointing to a folded corner of the letter. Clara unfolded it, revealing a crude sketch of path leading to a spot near their old farm, marked with an X. He left something there, Eleanor said. Something he meant for me to find. Will you help me? Clara's pulse quickened. She was a nurse, not an adventurer, but the look in Eleanor's eyes fierce, determined, alive made refusal impossible. Of course, she said. I'll help you. As they sat there, the coat between them, a new purpose flickered in the dim hospital room. Eleanor wasn't just mourning, she was beginning a journey. And Clara, unwittingly, was now part of it. The morning sun barely pierced the fog as Eleanor and Clara drove toward the Grayson farm, 40 miles from the hospital. The old pickup truck rattled along the country road, its engine groaning like it shared Eleanor's exhaustion. She sat in the passenger seat, Thomas's coat folded neatly in her lap, the letter tucked inside her pursy, a fragile map to a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Clara gripped the steering wheel, her nurse's scrubs swapped for jeans and a sweater. She'd taken a personal day, something she hadn't done in years, compelled by Eleanor's quiet resolve and the mystery of Thomas's letter. You sure you're up for this? Clara asked, glancing at Eleanor. It's cold out there, and the farm's been abandoned for years. Eleanor's eyes, bright with determination, met hers. I've waited 60 years for some answers, Clara. I won't wait another day. Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet, a reminder that age hadn't dulled her spirit. The farm came into view, a skeleton of its former self. The barn's red paint had peeled to gray, and the fields, once lush with corn, were now choked with weeds. Eleanor directed Clara to a dirt path behind the house, where the map's X marked a spot near an ancient oak tree. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and memory. Clara parked, and they stepped out, Eleanor leaning on a cane but moving with purpose. As they approached the oak, Clara noticed a figure in the distance, a man, maybe 60, leaning against a rusted tractor. His coat was patched, his face weathered, but his eyes locked onto them with unsettling intensity. Mrs. Grayson, he called, his voice rough but familiar, like it carried echoes of the past. Eleanor froze, her hand tightening on her cane. Who are you? She asked, her tone wary. The man stepped closer, his boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. Name's Samuel Hargrove. Victor's son. He nodded toward the oak. I heard about Thomas. Figured you'd come here eventually. Clara's stomach twisted. Victor Hargrove, the man from Thomas's letter, the one who'd pulled him into that shadowed deal. She stepped protectively in front of Eleanor, but the older woman waved her back. What do you know about my husband? Eleanor demanded, her voice cutting through the morning chill. Samuel's gaze softened, but there was a hardness beneath it. My father told me about the deal he made with Thomas. The packages, the money, but there's more you don't know. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. This was my father's. He wrote about Thomas and what he hid here. Eleanor's breath caught. Clara, sensing the weight of the moment, took the journal when Samuel offered it. She opened it, her eyes scanning Victor's cramped handwriting. The entries detailed the deal. Thomas had delivered 3 packages, each containing cash from Victor's less-than-legal ventures. But the final entry was different. It mentioned a gift Victor had given Thomas, not money, but something personal, something meant to absolve the guilt. It was buried under the oak, marked by a stone. Clara read aloud, her voice trembling. Thomas refused the last payment. Said he'd done enough wrong. I gave him the locket instead, me mother's. Told him to keep it for his Ellie, to remind her she was worth more than his mistakes. Eleanor's hand flew to her chest, where a silver locket had once hung, a gift from Thomas, given to her after that brutal winter of '63. She'd lost it years ago, or so she thought. He told me he sold his watch to buy it. she whispered, her voice breaking. He lied to protect me. Samuel nodded. My father wasn't a good man, but he respected Thomas. Said he was the only one who ever walked away from his deals. He pointed to the oak. Whatever's there, it's yours. I'm just here to make sure it's found. Clara and Eleanor exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Clara grabbed a shovel from the truck, and they began to dig. The ground was hard, the work slow, but Samuel joined in, his strength surprising for his age. After 20 minutes, the shovel hit something solid, a metal box, rusted but intact, nestled beneath a flat stone. Eleanor knelt, her hands shaking as she opened it. Inside was the locket, its silver tarnished but unmistakable, nestled in a bed of faded velvet. Beside it was a photograph of her and Thomas, young and laughing, taken the summer they married. A note, in Thomas's handwriting, read, "For Ellie, my heart, always." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks, but they weren't just grief. They were relief, love, forgiveness. She clutched the locket, pressing it to her heart. Clara, her own eyes misty, rested a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. Samuel watched silently, his expression unreadable but soft. I thought I knew him, Eleanor said, her voice steady now. But he was even more than I imagined. Samuel cleared his throat. There's one more thing, he said, hesitating. My father's journal, it mentions a second box. Somewhere on this farm. He didn't say where, only that it's for you, too. Eleanor's eyes widened, a spark of curiosity igniting through her sorrow. Clara felt it too, a pull toward the unknown, a need to uncover the rest of Thomas's legacy. The farm stretched out before them, vast and secretive, hiding truths yet to be unearthed. The farm seemed to hold its breath as Eleanor, Clara, and Samuel stood beneath the oak, the rusted metal box now a sacred relic in Eleanor's hands. The locket gleamed faintly in the pale sunlight, a tangible piece of Thomas's love, but the mention of a second box cast a new shadow over the moment. Eleanor's fingers traced the photograph inside the box, her eyes distant yet alive with purpose. He always had a way of surprising me, she said softly, even now. Clara, still reeling from the weight of the locket's discovery, scanned the journal Samuel had given them. Victor's cryptic words offered no clear direction. The second gift lies where the heart of the farm beats strongest. The phrase was poetic but maddeningly vague. The farm spanned acres, fields, barns, a crumbling silo, the old house itself. Where could it be? Samuel shifted uncomfortably, his boots scuffing the dirt. My father loved his riddles, he said. Always said the farm had secrets only the Graysons would understand. I don't know more than that. His tone carried a hint of regret, as if he, too, was searching for closure from a father he'd never fully known. Eleanor straightened, her cane planted firmly in the ground. The heart of the farm, she murmured. Thomas always said that was the kitchen, where we planned our days, shared our dreams. Her voice trembled with memory. If there's another box, it's there. Clara nodded, her practical mind kicking in. Let's check the house, then. But carefully, it's been abandoned for years. She glanced at Samuel, still an enigma. His presence felt like both a blessing and a question mark. Why had he come now, after all these years? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on Eleanor's determined stride toward the farmhouse. The house was a ghost of its former self. Dust coated every surface, and the floorboards creaked underfoot. The kitchen, once warm with the scent of baking bread, now smelled of mildew and neglect. Eleanor paused at the threshold, her eyes tracing the faded wallpaper where she and Thomas had once hung their children's drawings. This was our place, she said, her voice thick. Every Sunday, he'd make coffee, and we'd talk until the stars came out. Clara and Samuel began searching, checking cabinets, tapping walls for hollow spots. Eleanor pointed to the old hearth, its stones blackened from years of fires. There, she said. Thomas loved that fireplace. Said it was the soul of the house. Samuel knelt by the hearth, running his hands along the stones. One wobbled slightly, its mortar loose. Here, he said, his voice tight with anticipation. Clara handed him a crowbar from the truck, and he pried the stone free, revealing a small cavity. Inside was another metal box, smaller than the first, its surface etched with intricate vines. Eleanor's breath caught as Samuel handed it to her. The box was locked, but a tiny key hung from a chain inside the locket. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon, and a small velvet pouch. The letters were addressed to her, each dated from the winter of 1963. The pouch held a single pearl ring, simple but elegant, its band inscribed with "Forever, Ellie." Clara watched as Eleanor unfolded the first letter, her face a canvas of emotions: grief, love, wonder. The letters were Thomas's confessions, written during the darkest days of their financial ruin. Each one detailed his fears, his guilt over the deal with Victor, and his unwavering love for her. "I did it for you," Ellie one read, "but I'll spend my life making it right." The room felt smaller, the air thick with the weight of Thomas's words. Clara's heart ached for Eleanor, who was reliving a past she'd only half known. But then Samuel spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "There's something else you should know," he said. "My father, he wasn't just a businessman. He was involved in dangerous things. Those packages Thomas carried, they weren't just cash." Clara's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Samuel's eyes darkened. "They were evidence. Ledgers, documents, things that could have brought down some powerful people. My father trusted Thomas because he knew he'd never look inside. But someone else did. Someone who's been watching this farm ever since." Eleanor's hand tightened on the letters. "Who?" she asked, her voice sharp. Samuel hesitated, then pointed to a faint noise outside, a low hum, like an engine idling. Clara rushed to the window, her heart pounding. A black sedan sat at the edge of the field, its windows tinted, its presence ominous. "We need to move," she said, her nurse's calm giving way to instinct. "Now." Eleanor clutched the box, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I'm not leaving Thomas's truth behind," she said. "Not again." As they hurried toward the truck, the sedan's engine roared to life, its headlights cutting through the dusk. Clara's mind raced. Were they after the letters? The ring? Or something else entirely? Samuel's face was grim, his hand on the crowbar like a weapon. The farm, once a haven, now felt like a trap. The truck's tires squealed as Clara floored the gas, the black sedan gaining in the rearview mirror. Eleanor sat rigid in the passenger seat, the metal box and its contents, letters, ring, and the weight of Thomas's secrets clutched tightly to her chest. Samuel, in the back seat, kept his eyes on the sedan, his knuckles white around the crowbar. "They're not stopping," he said, his voice taut. "Whoever they are, they want what's in that box." Clara's mind raced as she navigated the narrow country road, the farm fading into the twilight behind them. "Why now?" she asked, her voice sharp with adrenaline. "Thomas has been gone for years. Why come for this now?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "Because I showed up. I was supposed to stay away, but when I heard Thomas passed, I thought it was time to make things right. I didn't know they were still watching." Eleanor's eyes, sharp despite her age, flicked to Samuel. "Who's they?" she demanded. "And what did your father pull my Thomas into?" Samuel exhaled, the truth spilling out like a confession. "My father worked for a syndicatesmal time, but ruthless. The packages Thomas carried were records of their deals, names, dates, transactions. They thought Thomas might have kept copies. When I came here, they must have figured the secret was out." Clara swerved to avoid a pothole, her heart pounding. "So they're after the letters? Or the ring?" "The ring's nothing," Samuel said. "It's the letters. They're proof names of people who don't want to be named. Thomas didn't know what he was carrying, but he was smart enough to hide something, just in case." Eleanor's face hardened, her grief now laced with fury. "He carried their poison to save our home," she said. "And now they want to bury him all over again." She opened the box, pulling out the letters. "We're not running. Not from this." Clara glanced at her, torn between fear and admiration. "Mrs. Grayson, if we stop, they'll catch us. We need a plan." Eleanor's eyes met hers, steady and fierce. "Take us to the old mill. It's 5 miles west. Thomas and I used to hide there when we were young. It's defensible." Clara nodded, her nurse's instincts giving way to something primal. She turned onto a side road, the sedan still trailing but not yet closing the gap. The mill loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the darkening sky. Its walls were crumbling, but its isolation offered a chance to regroup. They reached the mill, scrambling inside as the sedan's headlights swept the road. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of old grain. Eleanor led them to a loft, her cane tapping against the wooden steps with surprising speed. "There's a trapdoor," she said, pointing to a corner. "Thomas built it for emergencies." Samuel pried it open, revealing a small space beneath the floorboards. They squeezed inside, the box and coat tucked beside Eleanor. The sedan's engine cut off outside, replaced by the crunch of footsteps. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears as voice slow, urgent echoed through the mill. "They're here," one said. "Find the old lady. She's got it." Eleanor's hand found Clara's, her grip steady. "Thomas faced worse than this," she whispered. "So can we." Samuel leaned close, his voice barely audible. "There's a way out through the riverbank. If we can get to the truck, we're clear." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring this to you." Eleanor's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "You brought me the truth. That's worth fighting for." The footsteps grew closer, boards creaking above them. Clara's mind raced, piecing together a plan. "We wait," she whispered. "Let them think we're gone, then make a break for it." Minutes stretched like hours, the air heavy with tension. Finally, the voices faded, replaced by the sound of the sedan pulling away. Clara peeked through a crack in the trapdoor. The mill was empty, moonlight spilling through broken windows. "Now," she said. They climbed out, moving swiftly but silently. Eleanor's strength surprised Clara. She moved like a woman half her age, driven by love and defiance. They reached the truck, but as Clara turned the key, headlights flared in the distance. The sedan was back. "Go!" Samuel shouted, and Clara gunned the engine, the truck lurching forward. The chase resumed, but this time, Eleanor was ready. She opened the box, pulling out the letters. "If they want these, they'll have to take them from me," she said, her voice fierce. Clara's eyes darted to the rearview mirror. The sedan was close, too close. But then Samuel leaned out the window, hurling the crowbar at the sedan's windshield. It cracked, the car swerving wildly before slowing. Clara seized the chance, pushing the truck to its limit until the sedan was a speck in the distance. They drove in silence, the mill fading behind them. Eleanor clutched the letters, her face a mix of triumph and sorrow. "Thomas left me more than a legacy," she said. "He left me a fight." Clara nodded, her hands steady on the wheel. "What now?" she asked. Eleanor looked at the letters, then at Samuel, then at the road ahead. "We find out who they are, and we make sure Thomas's truth sees the light." The night stretched on, the truck carrying them toward an uncertain future, bound by a promise sewn into a coat and sealed in a letter.